Welcome to Ember Igniters Podcast, the podcast that sets your soul ablaze. I am so honored to have a good friend of mine, Autumn Hartpence, here with us today, and along with my co-host, Fran Malfer. And today we just kind of want to talk about when life gives you lemons, right? And so we were talking the other day, and I absolutely loved your analogy. So I kind of wanted to give you the floor and let you run with it.
Okay. So I have had trials and tribulations from my time in the service in the Air Force, and then transitioning out has not exactly been the easiest road. And so kind of having words of affirmation to coach me through tough times, I do kind of fall suit with other strong women that I know who has so much strength to pour into others, but we do not have that, leave enough of that strength to pour into ourselves. And sometimes we have to be our own advocate to get us through tough times. And Jen and I were talking about a particular saying that says, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Well, that's the idea behind that is the optimism is, turn something that's sour, bitter into something that's enjoyable and refreshing. And so, but it takes more than that, as you can't just have lemons and water. You just have bitter water at that point. You want to have other ingredients, like you want to have ice and you want to have an appropriate sweetener. But what that means is you shouldn't have to fight alone. You shouldn't have to do anything alone.
It's true.
There's strength in numbers. And so, as we were just talking about, like those of us who have children, we talk about it takes a village to raise a child. It's okay to lean on support of others. That does not associate with weakness. That does not associate with any shame or guilt. And we want to aspire to be better. It's in human nature to be validated, to feel heard. We want to have purpose. And it's okay to admit to our mistakes, but we want to turn the mess in our life and turn it into a message.
I totally agree. I think all too often when we reach out for help, a lot of people, yes, do think that it's weakness, but sometimes there's an embarrassment that comes with it. Like, oh, I'm not strong enough to handle it on my own, or I can't handle it on my own, that sort of thing.
We don't want to lose control of our lives.
Yes, that's a good point.
I think that your story is so well taken because we speak a great deal about that. And I love that you talk about the fact that you can take whatever's really not working in your life and with a little help. And sometimes we forget. It's just a little help, right? When you think of making lemonade, you're adding a little extra, which is that sweetener to your life. So thank you for reminding us that there is a way to do it.
Mm-hmm. So one thing working with veterans in particular is we have that servant leadership mentality. It is ingrained in us since the beginning of our enlistment to be leaders, to be followers, to be structured individuals. But we have this expectation of strength for the greater good. And we don't like to admit that when we are losing that or have made poor decisions that have put us in a negative space. And I will be actually direct with the veterans. I'm like, you didn't go to war by yourself, did you? And they'd be like, no, ma'am. I said, so how is this different? Because what you're telling me is that you're fighting an internal battle, that you have a limited skill set to where you need more manpower. And what you're doing is you're enlisting me to fight with you through this challenge. You're not asking me for help. You're asking for my skill sets to really strengthen your fight to get through this battle that you're going through. And changing that narrative in a way that they understand to where it relieves them of that guilt, shame, that negative feeling. I'm like, it takes an army to win a war. It's not an army of one.
Right. And I think that starts even in training, because in basic training, they really come at you with what you should be thinking. They tell you not to think in those sorts of things as well. And so when you're in a weak point at that time, I mean, you have the drill sergeants yelling at you, basically saying, suck it up, buttercup, and, keep going. And so it kind of starts there, unfortunately.
I also think that, in my generation, you would hear people say, well, I'm not going to take charity, or I'm not going to accept help. I love the way that you framed that. It's not about helping, it's about accessing skills. They have skills, you have skills. How can you bring them together? And then you become your own little community of sorts, and it can expand from there.
So because of that philosophy of like, I don't want to accept charity, I don't get handouts. So I'm like, okay, well, once we get through this point, I encourage you to join those organizations and pay it forward, because you are a living testimony of the process.
That's right.
And so that way, that would be your form of, air quote, repayment.
Great.
So that way you are doing a service to others in exchange. So
It also comes with other benefits, but they can't see past their face right that second before joining a veteran service organization. And really, a lot of every veteran service organization, in my opinion, is equal. There's not one that's better than the other, because we put imperfect people in charge of those organizations. And so our experiences are based on dealing with those, unfortunately, imperfect people. And so when you have someone say, oh, well, this organization is terrible and, this one's worse or whatnot, it's based on their experience dealing with those people. And I also think in those organizations, people, they start sometimes because it makes them feel important.
it's that validation piece again.
Again, absolutely. And they need that and want that, because it goes back to the service. We all sign on the dotted line for a service. And so when they get validated, they're like, oh, and then it becomes like needing that like dopamine hit of that.
Sure.
So to kind of flip the coin on this too, when you take that mentality home to your personal life and you have a family and your children see you as the example, are you being the person you want them to be when they grow up? Because as people, and I will tell you, being in part of different mom groups about the exhaustion of like, I need a break, I need some. Well, what did you think that motherhood was going to be like?
Yeah.
Now you have invested in this child, whether they were planned or not, but can they not be your piece? You are their parent. You are not their friend. And I know that's easier said than done because everybody's different.
Yeah.
So my daughter's 2, and everybody goes like, oh, she's probably in those terrible 2s.
Yeah.
Well, she's only in that phase because she's learning her language. She's exploring the world. And in her mind, she has seen me do it. She has seen others do it. She's convinced herself she can do it, but her motor skills are still 2. So she's frustrated because she's
trying so hard.
She's trying so hard. And when she gets frustrated, she'll mumble, and then it's hard for me to understand. And I have to mentally coach myself to exercise patience, to let her have her big feelings. Doesn't make her a brat, doesn't make her bad. I don't let her hurt herself. I don't let her get out of control with the temper tantrum. I redirect to contain the behavior and distract, so that way she can kind of reshift her focus on something else. But having that amount of patience on my part, and that's kind of where the good thing about being an older mom, and because there's that balance too of my own personality. Everybody talks about, I raised my kids the same. I'm like, it's not physically possible for you to raise your kids the same, because you're not the same person with your firstborn as you are with your secondborn.
That's
because
so
of your
true.
own age.
That is so true. I love that you're bringing out the fact that as a mother, but this transfers into life, whether you're a mother, a co-worker, a worker, CEO of a company, who you are and what you believe in yourself and what you're capable of, right? Even if you don't have all the skill sets like your 2-year-old, she feels capable, she's ready to go, but she doesn't have the skill sets. It's great that she has you as an example, and I love that our audience is in this place of maybe looking at life, from the lemon standpoint.
And that's why I brought that particular saying up, is because you want to feel grateful, but at the same time, there's a weight to something like that.
Yes.
It's exhausting to be a parent. It's exhausting to be a single parent. But at the same time, I have to kind of keep a mental balance to myself of like, she's healthy, she's happy, even though she wasn't part of my plan, but God blessed me with her to where I'm in a better place in life, because when I was a struggling vet, I don't know how I would have been able to do it. Oh my gosh, I was already having a hard time with myself transitioning out of the Air Force. I can't imagine doing that with a toddler.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to that time and, because that is when you experienced the most of your lemons, right?
Yeah.
And kind of share a little bit about that.
So I was active duty from 2002 to 2016. And things I do now in advocacy for veterans and their families is kind of bringing to light the things we don't talk about. Perfect example is military life is extremely structured.
Very much
There's
so.
stuff that we don't have to worry about. So when we transition, unfortunately, the military is a business. So to have appropriate programs to transition from service members to veterans, it's not where it should be, because they're losing their investment. And I understand they might be a little bitter about that. I get that from a business standpoint.
It happens, right?
So after 14 years of active duty, I had a 2-week class to help me transition.
That's it?
That's it.
2 weeks?
2 weeks. And one particular moment that stood out really big in my mind is I was with an airman who'd only been in for like 4 years. I've been in for a lot longer. But we were practicing interviewing each other. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this is the most blind leading the blind exercise I have ever been a part of. And it didn't really dawn on me till after I was out, because I think I only retained 30% of the information because I was so overwhelmed that my life was going from stable to unstable. And I gave myself a lot more credit and thought I was a lot smarter than I actually was, that like, I will figure it out when I get out. I just need to be out. So
We kind of feel like that.
yeah, because it's a huge step. It's a huge leap of faith. And so it didn't dawn on me till later that I was really struggling to find a job, that I left. So I joined at 18, left at 19. I'm now 33 at the time. And I still only had my 19-year-old knowledge about life at 33.
Oh, wow.
Excuse me.
That is a hard one to face. Realize.
Yeah, and that was a big epiphany on my part, because I didn't know how to translate my military skill to civilian life, because of course they want to be like, thank you for your service, I'm really grateful for what you've done for your country, but you still have to be a cultural fit to the job. Because if they hired veterans just because they're veterans, that would be a big liability to their company, to their business, because you want to have someone who's appropriate for the job.
Yes, that's right.
That's just kind of, what they're looking for. Now, there are jobs out there that could transition, but that's not always the case. When you're done, you're done. When you've made up your decision of like, I cannot do this anymore. So I had used my education benefits to go back for my master's, because my bachelor's degree was not really worth anything anymore, because I had learned that. So I wanted to be a registered dietitian, so I went to school for nutritional science. And I didn't know till after I graduated that my school was not fully accredited to fulfill that goal.
Oh, no.
What
Not
a
only that, but
disappointment. Yeah.
1,200 hours of internship, and I couldn't do it because I was active duty. So I missed that window. So nothing hurts worse than a wasted degree.
Yeah.
And so I'd end up going back to school for my master's, because I needed something to put on a resume. I needed to gain skill sets. And I worked any kind of job that would have me. I washed windows. I worked as an assistant at a printing company, like anyone that would hire me. And I already had my degree. And I think the thing that probably hurt me the worst is having a militant personality.
Oh, what do you mean by a militant personality?
So having...
Look at you. You're just so engaging and so wonderful.
Yeah, but it's 8 years later.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
I had to learn that. And I actually had a mentor sit me down, and she's like, Autumn, you have this mindset like you have something to prove, and you don't have to prove anything to anyone. That's one of the biggest problems of women in the military, is because our population is so small that we still have to work harder to show our worth.
We do.
Because it wasn't very well received that
we even came in.
Right. Which I feel the opposite. I said women can do great things
Yeah.
that should have been valued. However, our history has shown that, we're supposed to be nurturers and men are supposed to be of nature the way God intended. But I still feel that as time goes on, there should be some sort of evolution. It even happens in the animal kingdom. They evolve with the changing of the climate. Why can't we evolve as human beings to support each other, to have stronger families, to have stronger households? So kind of going back to the whole military aspect of it is, I don't struggle well. So going to school and, I was basically homeless. I was staying with family. Women veterans have a tendency to couch surf, men more outsiders because they like camping more. I don't know how that works.
It's a glamping in us, right?
Right. And so, trying to just do everything I can. And I, got outside my comfort zone. It really was kind of a mix between an extrovert, introvert, depending on the scene. So having to put myself out there, I joined organizations. I showed up at these events. I found all kinds of things to do at Eventbrite. And I would just go to talk to people. Just because that was the only way I was going to survive, is if people don't know my worth, I'm just going to be existing.
I think it's really important that you said that. And the reason I think that's important is because many times we find ourselves, in a situation, and if we don't believe in ourselves, you're never going to get out of that sort of stuck position. So when you had to say, I have to go do this for me, that's a really key aspect of any kind of transformation in our lives, is to have that understanding within you first.
Want to hear something that'll really blow your mind?
Yes.
You set the parameters for your comfort zone.
Wow.
That's amazing. Can you say that again?
You set the parameters for your comfort zone.
Ooh.
We talk about the comfort zone, and we relate the comfort zone to a campfire. And so it's like, if you think about it, it's like the comfort zone is the only place that the light hits around you. And so out of your comfort zone is where it starts to get dark. And
That's a really good one.
And so that's really cool that you say that, because that imagery just it gives me chills, gave you chills
Yes, it did.
with it. But it's that one step outside is all you need to go to the next level. And a lot of people are so scared of the dark that they won't even try.
So I have another one for you too. This is one of my favorite ones. So if you imagine you're in a room and it's got one overhead light that causes like the circular light in the middle. Mm-hmm. So that's what I call your social circle. Everybody's standing in the light of your life.
There you go.
But then you're in a square room, there's people standing in the dark corners. So when you hear people say they're in my corner as opposed to my social circle, the people who are in the dark corner of your mind know you best when you're at your most vulnerable.
That's good.
That's great.
That's really good.
So I love that one.
Preacher girl.
I think when you do visualizations like what you just did, it starts painting a picture in our minds. And if we've never had someone who has painted a picture for us, whether we're in school and we have no ambition because no one's ever helped paint a picture of what I'm capable of or doing. That's why we talk about that comfort zone being like that. It's scary out there. And it takes you being able to make that one little tiny baby step, which is so important. And it's possible.
When you said that, I had a spark. So yes, it's scary out there in that comfort zone. But what if your campfire is also in a familiar place? Like, we tend to go back to the same campground.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Great.
So you do know what's beyond. But for some reason, there's still something there that's holding you there in the comfort zone, whether it be your comfortability or something like a wrong belief that you might have.
You already said it. It's fear. It's fear of the unknown. You're scared of what's out there. And that was going to be my question, is like, why are you scared of the dark?
Yeah.
Well, what's out there that's so scary?
Well, and then flip it also, like, what if you faced the fear? What would happen?
I mean, if you have a fear of the unknown, you have all the capability and power and free will to be prepared for that. Mm-hmm. Having the mindset of being prepared for the worst, hoping for the best. So If you're a single woman out at night, stuff like that, do you have something on you to defend yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know basic maneuvers for self-defense to get away? Do you know what inhabits that area that could be a potential danger to you?
Right. You should
It's that
know,
this simple preparation so that way you can enjoy the peace and solitude and actually see all the stars in the sky without light.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
It's true.
There's nothing to be afraid of if you have armed yourself appropriately with knowledge and resources. Then you can have the best life possible.
Sure can.
Because fear robs you of your peace.
It sure does. I think it also robs
And you
of
don't
your
even know
purpose.
what you're afraid of. That's the part. Is like you,
Right.
your peace is being taken from you and you don't even know why.
It's true. And then in the end result, it robs you from your purpose
Yeah.
in life.
It also derails you from your purpose.
Ain't that the truth?
Because time's going to pass by anyway. Are you making use of it? Because I know a lot of people who are existing and not living. I'm not saying you have to go extreme every single day. But if you got bad news tomorrow, can you wake up and say, I had a really great life.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't have regrets that still haunt me, kind of thing. And those who have trauma, it will always be a part of you.
Yeah.
But are you doing things that are within your control to not let it continually weigh you down? I know these things are easier said than done, but they're not impossible.
It kind of reminds me of something we also talk about a lot is that who's the person we talk to the most, right? Well, actually, it's ourselves. And why do I say that is because our mind is always moving. Even if you're listening to us, your mind is thinking things and putting, your own spin on it, that kind of thing. And so often what happens is we hear things in a way that makes us talk negatively about ourselves. So even when you think, okay, fear, what your fear of the unknown, it's because we don't think we have what it takes. So being able to hear yourself in your mind, you said it takes a mind shift. I think that's what you said, or maybe a little different than that. But
Essentially,
yeah. It's like you got to take whatever that negative thing is, and you have to say, wait a minute, that's not true, which Jenna alluded to it earlier, which is what's your belief system.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, if I had a negative thought, I'd want to put kind of a stop sign in front of myself and say, rephrase that. Look at it differently. Because it has worked for me. And I've seen ways in which I can look at life completely different. And so I think that's a really good point.
Well, at the end of the day, people will come and go in your life that you might not understand why.
Yeah.
But until the day you die, you have you. And that's kind of what people worry about. I'm like, one of the things that my dad, rest his soul, would tell me when I had an issue, where other girls were not as nice to me, kind of
Yeah.
in that preteen phase. And hey,
That
no
never
kidding,
happened.
no kidding. He goes, Autumn, when somebody's got a problem with you, that's your problem. Why are you worried about that?
Right.
Oh, like you're making it your problem?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Like
a good
what-
one.
So you picked it up and you believed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So I just had a birthday pass, and I love that people are like, you don't look your age. And I said, they're like, what's your secret?